My name is Olivia Reynolds. I was 31 when my life fell apart in 7 words. It was 10:12 p.m., a quiet Thursday night. I was sitting on the edge of the bed Liam and I had spent all Saturday building together. The mattress still smelled of fresh linen, the kind you notice when the world around you feels normal, until it isn't. My phone lit up. I didn't expect it to be him, not at this hour. I stared at the message. I don't love you anymore. No call. No, we need to talk. Just that. Cold. Precise. Like a scalpel. I felt my chest tighten, my heart skipping a beat, like a car crash slowed down in slow motion. I read it again. Then again. I wanted to scream. I wanted to type 100 furious replies. How could you do this? Why now? Are you even human? But deep down, I knew. This wasn't an invitation to discuss. It was a verdict. So I typed, "Thanks for letting me know." Then I turned my phone off, laid it on the nightstand, and let the silence wash over me. The apartment hummed around me, the fridge, the air conditioner, the faint sound of the city beyond the windows. But nothing mattered anymore. My life had cracked open. Oddly, I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was a strange, cold clarity, as if I were stepping out of my body to watch my own life fall apart. It wasn't about revenge or anger. It was about survival. The next morning, I brewed coffee and sat on the balcony, hands trembling around the mug, watching the city wake. My mind repeated one thing: damage control. I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet titled Project Extraction. Everything had to be accounted for: joint accounts, wedding deposits, vendors, the hall, the caterer, the photographer, the florist. Each entry hit me like a punch in the stomach. The total loss? $23,500. My money. Money I had insisted on paying because I thought it was love, security, partnership. Now it felt like the cruelest joke. I started packing. My clothes, my work files, my books. Liam's things? Untouched. Revenge was unnecessary. Closure was my goal. The engagement ring, a custom piece meant to symbolize forever, went to the jeweler. He offered 35% of its original price. I didn't argue. Sliding it across the counter, I realized it wasn't about the money, it was about erasing the symbol of a promise that no longer existed. The dress? That $6,500 gown hanging in the closet like a ghost of a future that would never happen. I took photos, close-ups of the lace and shimmer, and listed it online. Custom gown, never worn. Fiancé changed his mind. Maybe it would sell, maybe it wouldn't, but at least it wasn't haunting me anymore. Then came the apartment. Our lease had a hefty break clause, and the landlord made it clear: find someone to take over immediately or you pay the fee. The hunt for a new tenant began. All the while, Liam's text kept coming. Can we talk? You're overreacting. Your parents are worried. Don't make this worse. Every word dripped with entitlement. He had detonated our life together, and somehow I was the one being dramatic. I archived each message in a folder labeled Liam, knowing I might need them later. And then came Victor, his father. "Olivia," he said, voice dripping with false concern, "you need to talk to Liam. A real woman doesn't run from pre-wedding jitters." I ended the call without a word. My hands shook, but not from sadness anymore. Something new flickered inside me. Anger. Not reckless anger, but sharp, controlled, dangerous.
The next few days were all methodical dismantling. Every box I packed, every call I avoided, every sale I listed, it was like reclaiming pieces of myself. But Liam wasn't finished. He tried guilt. My mother can't sleep. You owe us an explanation. Then anger. You're being cold. This isn't how adults handle things. I ignored him. Then a new problem appeared. Leah, his cousin. She had moved into the apartment without my knowledge. Liam hadn't cleared his belongings and had let her stay there, under the table, for $500 a month. Weeks of legal headaches followed. Eviction notices, certified letters, hotel bills for temporary tenants. Every day was a new paper cut. Every night I fell into bed exhausted, questioning how someone I once trusted could turn my life into chaos. And yet, there was a spark of hope. My lawyer found proof of collusion. Screenshots, posts, texts, fraud, deception. Liam had not only abandoned me, but he was profiting off my pain. Court day arrived. Leah slouched in her chair. Liam avoided my gaze. Victor muttered under his breath. My folder of evidence sat heavy in my hands. Months of emails, invoices, and damning screenshots. The judge read the facts. The eviction was granted. Liam was ordered to reimburse me. Leah had to leave. Relief flooded through me, almost physical. For the first time, the 7 words that had shattered me felt irrelevant. My life wasn't theirs anymore. Weeks later, the dress sold. A letter came with it. Olivia, this gown found a future after all. Thank you for letting it. I traced the outline of the woman's smile with my thumb and realized betrayal had shaped me, but it did not define me. I had rebuilt my life from the wreckage, slowly, carefully, deliberately. And for the first time in months, I felt free. The morning after the court ruling, I woke up with a strange sense of emptiness and relief. The apartment was quiet, the city outside still waking, but inside, my mind felt like a battlefield littered with broken promises, unpaid bills, and half-packed boxes. I had won, technically. The judge had sided with me. Leah was gone. Liam had to pay. But the emotional toll? That wasn't measured in legal papers or dollar amounts. Sitting on the bare mattress of my temporary apartment, I wrapped my arms around myself. The warmth of the sunlight spilling through the window couldn't reach the cold knot in my chest. Months of planning, dreaming, and loving had been stripped away in a single text. And although the legal victory was mine, the real work, reclaiming my life, was just beginning. I started small. Coffee, a deep breath, a list. Lists had always calmed me. One for groceries, one for bills, one for furniture. Another, more important, for boundaries. Liam and his family were out of my apartment now, but I knew from experience that their reach extended beyond physical spaces. Emails, phone calls, even mutual friends. They could still try to sneak in, to influence, to manipulate. I would need to be ready. The first item on my new life list was healing. I forced myself outside for a walk, letting the crisp morning air fill my lungs. The city buzzed around me. Cars, joggers, the distant hum of a train. But I felt disconnected, like I was floating above it all, observing without participating. Every corner, every cafe we'd imagined visiting together, every park bench I'd pictured him sitting on, it was now mine to claim, mine to reclaim. By the second week, I had begun moving furniture into my new apartment. A small, 1-bedroom near the river. Simpler, quieter, nothing like the life Liam had promised. But as I unpacked each box, I noticed something remarkable. I wasn't just reclaiming items, I was reclaiming control. Every book I stacked, every dish I put in its place, every photograph I chose to hang, it was a declaration. I exist. I matter. I make the rules now. But freedom didn't come unchallenged. One evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. My stomach sank. Olivia, Liam's voice dripped faux charm. We need to talk. You're being unreasonable. You can't just erase me from your life. I let the call ring through to voicemail. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from anger. Controlled, sharp, focused. He had tried to manipulate me before, and I refused to let him draw me back into his chaos. Instead, I sent a single text to my lawyer. He called, recorded, save everything. I hung up and exhaled slowly, feeling a sense of strategic power for the first time in months. Victory wasn't just in the court's ruling. It was in how I handled the aftermath. I was no longer reacting blindly. I was methodical, deliberate.
The next challenge arrived in the form of Liam's cousin, Leah. Even after the eviction, she had begun posting on social media, bragging about how she tricked the system. It was infuriating, but my lawyer, Sarah, assured me we had proof beyond doubt. Leah had sublet illegally, and the posts only strengthened our case. I started spending evenings compiling evidence, screenshots, and notes into an organized digital folder. Each entry, each timestamp, each casual brag on social media was a weapon. And slowly, my fury transformed into something different. Clarity. Focus. Weeks blurred as I navigated the maze of paperwork, legal advice, and financial recalibration. I paid Mark and Sarah's hotel bills, filed eviction notices, and documented every email from Victor. Every time Liam or his family tried to insert themselves into my life, I reminded myself, this is not about revenge. This is about survival and justice. Through it all, there was an odd comfort in routine. Making the bed, doing dishes, running errands. Mundane acts suddenly felt sacred because they were mine. Each choice, each action was a statement of autonomy. One morning, as I sipped coffee on the balcony, I realized something crucial. Liam's betrayal had stripped me of my illusions, yes, but it had also stripped away fear. I had been scared of losing him, of confronting the consequences of breaking up, of living alone. Now I felt nothing but a cautious excitement for what came next. Then came the phone call from Sarah. Her voice, always calm but with an edge of triumph, carried news that made my stomach twist. Olivia, there's something you need to see. Leah posted a private message exchange with Liam. He's instructing her to keep the apartment under the radar, collect cash under the table. This is fraud. Total fraud. My chest burned. Fury, yes, but also a sharp, gratifying sense of vindication. Liam had tried to profit from my pain. He had attempted to manipulate the system, and now everything was exposed. I remember staring at the screen for what felt like hours, the words glowing like fire. Stay as long as you want. Just keep it quiet. I felt a grim satisfaction. Every betrayal, every calculated move Liam made only cemented my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing the truth, reclaiming what was mine, and preventing others from being hurt. It wasn't easy. Nights were long and quiet, stretching into insomnia. I replayed memories in my head, him laughing, holding my hand, making plans we would never fulfill. Then I'd see the text again. 7 words. I don't love you anymore. It was a daily push and pull between grief and rage, loss and empowerment. But slowly, I began shifting my perspective. Betrayal, I realized, wasn't the end. It was a teacher. Harsh and unforgiving, but a teacher nonetheless. I learned patience, strategy, and most importantly, self-worth. And then, the escalation. Victor, his father, sent another email. The tone was sharp, bordering on threatening. Olivia, you left Liam without support. You are responsible. If you don't comply, legal action will follow. I laughed. A short, bitter laugh because the absurdity was overwhelming. The man who had allowed his son to send a 7-word text, who had sanctioned subletting to Leah, was now demanding responsibility from me? Sarah calmed me. Don't respond. Every message they send is evidence. Let them dig their own hole. And so I did. I stayed silent. documenting, collecting, recording. Every attempt they made to manipulate or intimidate became a weapon in my hands. 2 months into this new chapter, I began rebuilding my life outside the courtroom. I joined a small book club, started hiking in the nearby hills, and even tried painting again. Each activity reminded me that life existed beyond betrayal, that I could find joy in simple things, that freedom, even if expensive or exhausting, was worth it. One afternoon, while unpacking a box of old books, I stumbled across our wedding invitations, gold foil, carefully printed, dates meticulously chosen. I almost threw them away but paused. Instead, I photographed each invitation. Then I shredded the rest. Every piece, every fragment was a conscious decision to let go of the past, not be haunted by it. Meanwhile, Liam's attempts escalated, moving from texts to emails and finally phone calls to mutual friends. "Tell her to reconsider. She's making a mistake," he pleaded, carefully planting seeds of guilt. I ignored them all. My focus was unwavering. Every day I reminded myself, your life is yours. You decide the narrative. Then, unexpectedly, a moment of relief. The dress I had listed online, the $6,500 gown, sold. The buyer included a note, "Olivia, this gown found a future. Thank you for letting it go." I sat on the floor staring at the email, tears running unchecked, not of sorrow, but of release. I traced her words like a lifeline, realizing for the first time in months, I was truly moving forward. By month 3, I had established a rhythm. Legal matters still lingered, but they no longer consumed me. The apartment, small and quiet, became a sanctuary. The bed I had assembled myself, the dishes I had unpacked, the books I had stacked, each was a statement of agency. And one evening, as the sun set over the river, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I realized something profound. I had survived the 7 words that destroyed everything, survived the betrayal, survived the chaos. And in doing so, I had rediscovered myself. I wasn't broken. I wasn't a victim. I was Olivia Reynolds, stronger, wiser, and finally free.
The morning sunlight felt different that day. Not warm, not comforting, just real. I had slipped poorly, but in a way that was restorative. Months of chaos, betrayal, and endless legal skirmishes had finally taken a pause. The apartment, now fully mine, smelled faintly of fresh paint and the lingering scent of old books. I walked slowly across the floorboards, bare feet brushing against the warmth of the sun, and realized I could finally breathe. It hadn't been easy. The court had settled the unlawful sublet, the hotel bills, the legal fees, and the reimbursement for Liam's scheming. Every dollar I had spent, every document I had filed, every phone call I had endured, it all led to this moment. And yet, as I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, I realized that freedom came at a cost far heavier than money. The messages had stopped. The calls ceased. Even Victor's entitlement had quietly evaporated into thin air. But I still carried the weight of memories, the ghosts of 7 words that had shattered my life. "I'm not in love with you anymore." I could replay them endlessly and still feel the sting. But now that sting no longer dictated my choices. I had reclaimed my agency, my voice, my life. I decided to mark this turning point properly. I drafted an email, not to Liam, not to Victor, not to Leah, but to myself. It was a vow, a record of survival. "Olivia, you are stronger than you think. You are more than betrayal. You are worthy of love, trust, and joy. This chapter ends with your courage." Pressing send, even to myself, felt like a release, like water finally breaking through a dam. I stared out the window at the river glinting in the afternoon sun. It was ordinary, mundane, unremarkable, and that was exactly what I needed. Ordinary life, rebuilt on my own terms. Then came the first real test of emotional closure. The phone rang. Unknown number. My heart skipped a beat. For a fraction of a second, I felt the old fear, the old dread.
But I didn't answer. Not this time. Instead, I let it ring. Voicemail clicked. I listened, recognizing the calm, almost pleading voice of Liam. "Olivia, please, can we meet? Just talk. I didn't mean..." I pressed delete. No anger, no malice, just silence, as I had learned to wield it like armor. I realized that true closure wasn't about confrontation. It wasn't about shouting, pleading, or even revenge. It was about control of my own reactions, my own emotions, my own story. Liam's apologies or excuses were irrelevant. What mattered was me, standing here, unshaken, unbroken. The next days were quiet. I returned to routines I had long forgotten. Morning walks by the river, journaling, simple dinners, and evenings filled with solitude that felt sacred rather than punishing. Each act reinforced the truth I had learned painfully. Healing is a slow process, but it's unstoppable once you commit to it. Then came a small, unexpected joy. The wedding gown I had sold months earlier, shimmering white, lace delicate as a memory, arrived in my inbox with a note from the bride-to-be. "Olivia, thank you for letting this gown go. It brought me joy, and now it carries a new story of love. I hope your heart finds peace as mine has found a dream." I held the photo of her smiling in the gown, standing beside her husband, and for the first time, I laughed without bitterness. A full, genuine laugh. Not the hollow, brittle laugh I had forced when confronted by Victor or Liam. This was joy, filtered through months of pain, struggle, and triumph. I realized that what had been taken from me could still create happiness, not for him, but for me and others. But life wasn't done testing me yet. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes labeled miscellaneous, I found a small envelope addressed to me. My name, written in familiar handwriting. Liam's. I hesitated. For a heartbeat, the old fear surged. What did he want now? But I opened it anyway. Inside was a single card. "Olivia, I see now what I lost. I can't ask for forgiveness, nor should I. I only hope one day you find love that doesn't waver, people who don't betray, and a life that's fully yours." A strange calm washed over me. No anger, no longing, just clarity. This was not manipulation, not a trap. It was acknowledgement, the barest recognition that he had failed, and that, I realized, was enough. I could close this chapter fully.
Weeks later, I began to notice something remarkable. Life, returning in small, unexpected ways. Friends I had neglected during the chaos called more often. Neighbors smiled as I carried groceries. A colleague invited me out for lunch. The world had not stopped while I had been mired in betrayal and courtrooms. It had waited patiently, offering small signs of normalcy. I even joined a local art class. Painting had always been my sanctuary, and now it became a symbol of rebirth. Each brushstroke was deliberate, a way to reclaim creativity, confidence, and control. Slowly, the walls of my apartment filled with color, and with them, the empty spaces of my heart began to fill too. Then came the most unexpected part, trusting again. I met Jonathan, a quiet man with kind eyes and a patient demeanor. We met at the art class, shared smiles over mixed paints, and small conversations about techniques and colors. He didn't rush me, didn't probe my past, didn't attempt to fix anything. He merely existed alongside me, and that alone was refreshing. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe, not because the world had changed, but because I had. I had learned to recognize people worth my energy and those who weren't. And I had learned that boundaries weren't walls, they were guides for what I would and wouldn't accept. Months passed, seasons changed. I started walking along the river at dawn, coffee in hand, notebook beside me. Life felt ordinary again, yet profoundly new. Every choice I made, every step I took was a declaration of independence. I didn't need validation from Liam, Victor, or anyone who had tried to manipulate my life. One evening, I stood on the balcony, watching the sun set behind the skyline. The city glimmered like a promise.
I thought about the 7 words that had shattered my world. I'm not in love with you anymore. And I smiled. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with peace. They no longer had power. Not over my mind, not over my choices, not over my life. The court battles, the betrayal, the heartbreak, all of it had forged something stronger in me. A life rebuilt, a heart guarded, but open. And finally, a soul at peace with itself. In the quiet of my apartment that night, I made a small ritual. A journal entry, a cup of tea, and the last photograph of the wedding gown. I placed it on the shelf, a reminder not of loss, but of resilience. The story that had begun with heartbreak and chaos ended not with vengeance, but with clarity, strength, and hope. I was Olivia Reynolds, survivor, warrior, and now, fully, myself. And as I closed the journal, I whispered into the empty room,